If you want to play the game that follows the plot of the book, Little Sister, then click Original Plot. If you want to play the game where the motives and murderers are not the same as the original plot, then click Alternate Plot. After you've made your selection, click Start to begin.
That's no way to talk to people over the phone, Mr. Marlowe.
She hadn't wanted to discuss her possible case over the phone. She wanted to discuss me.
If I talked like that to one of Dr. Zugsmith's patients, I'd lose my position.
Perhaps we did get off on the wrong foot, Miss...
I still think you should apologize. My name is Orpha Quest.
Anybody ever tell you you're a cute little trick?
I should hope not.
Hope isn't exactly the word. Get yourself a pair of those slinky glasses with colored rims.
Dr. Zugsmith wouldn't permit anything like that. Do you really think so? But you've been very rude, and if I hire you...
If you hire me, I'm the guy you hire. What's your trouble?
I can't find my brother. He left our home in Manhattan, Kansas. He came out here. He stopped writing to us, Mother and me. We just got so worried, I came out to see what was wrong. I had his address.
Which is?
449 Idaho Street in Bay City. I went there. It wasn't very nice. I think the manager had been drinking. I don't see how Orrin could have lived in a place like that. The manager said he moved. I checked with the post office. They didn't have a forwarding address. I talked to the personnel office where he was working at Cal-Western Company, but they said he didn't work there anymore. He'd been laid off.
Why didn't you call in the police?
I wouldn't dare ask the police. Orrin would never forgive me. Besides, our family's not the type of family to...
So, since you couldn't find him yourself, you decided to hire a detective. Someone who could find Orrin, but be discreet about it. Why did Orrin leave Manhattan, Kansas?
He didn't have to. He was going to be a surgeon like our father, but after 2 years he switched to engineering. Then a year ago he came out here to work for Cal-Western in Bay City. That left Mother and I alone in Kansas, with both my sister Layla and my brother Orrin gone. It wasn't like Orrin not to write regularly. But the last letter was several months ago. Mother and I got worried, so it was my vacation and I took the train out to see him. I'd written to Orrin that I was coming, but I didn't get any answer. So all I could do was go down to where he lived, and you know the rest.
You want me to finish your story for you? He moved, and you don't know where he moved to. And you're afraid he's living a life of sin in some penthouse with something in a long mink coat and an interesting perfume. Or am I being coarse?
Please, Mr. Marlowe, I don't think anything of the sort about Orrin. And if he heard you say that, you'd be sorry. He can be awfully mean.
Well then, just what do you think might have happened?
I guess if I knew that, I wouldn't have come to see you. How much would you charge to find him?
$40 a day, plus expenses.
That's far too much. I couldn't possibly afford more than $20. I've got to buy my meals and my hotel.
What hotel are you staying at?
I'd rather not tell you if you don't mind.
Why?
I'd just rather not. I'm terribly afraid of Orrin's temper. And, well, I can always call you, can't I?
Let's see a photo of him. There was a lot she hadn't told me. I could ask about Orrin, or I could ask about the family. Tell me about Orrin.
He was 28 years old. He has light brown hair. He's very tall, over 6 feet. He used to wear a little blonde mustache, but Mother made him cut it off. She said...
Don't tell me. The minister needed it to stuff a cushion.
You can't talk like that about my mother.
There's a lot of things about you I don't know, but you can stop pretending to be an Easter lily. What about his habits? What does he do for fun, besides not smoking or drinking or going out with girls?
He studies a lot, and he has a very expensive camera he likes to snap people with when they don't know. Sometimes it makes them mad. But Orrin says people ought to see themselves as they really are.
Let's hope it never happens to him. What kind of camera is it?
One of those little cameras with a very fine lens. You can take snaps in almost any kind of light. A Leica.
All right, I'll take the case. But you ought to be able to guess what happened. He's in a strange city. He's made good money for a while. He's meeting a kind of people he never met before. So he just broke training, and he doesn't want his family to know about it. He'll straighten out.
No, Orrin's not the type to do that, Mr. Marlowe.
Anyone is. Out here, he's lonely. He's got dough. He's got himself all jammed up with some floozy and a bottle of hooch. After all, the guy's going on 29 years old, and if he wants to roll in the gutter, that's his business.
I hate to believe you, Mr. Marlowe. I'd hate for Mother...
Something was said about $20.
Do I have to pay you now?
That would be the custom. I'll give you a receipt.
I don't need a receipt, Mr. Marlowe.
I do. You won't give me your name and address, so I want something with your name on it.
What for?
To show I'm representing you. Call me any time. Bristol Apartments, apartment 428.
I shan't be very likely to visit you.
I haven't asked you yet. So, I found myself employed, and for the unheard of sum of $20 a day. There were a few places I could investigate, and I always have the resources in my office. I tucked my gun into my shoulder. I put my gun back in the drawer. I didn't need it where I was going. Miss Orpha Mae Quest, my current client, was small, neat, and prissy. She wore rimless glasses, no makeup, and no jewelry. She wasn't that kind of girl. And yet there was something in her eyes that was much older than Manhattan, Kansas. From the description she'd given me, Orrin Quest sounded like a sleazy, sanctimonious weasel. Imagine somebody whose hobby was taking sneaky photographs. If he was my brother, I might be glad I lost him. But she wanted him found. Why? The question was, where to next? Cal Western is an oil field with ambitions of becoming a refinery. I'd explained what I was looking for and why, and the office manager had obligingly found Orrin Quest's one-time foreman for me.
Yes, I knew Orrin Quest. He didn't work here too long, about a year. The company had to let go about half of the second shift about 3 months ago, and Quest was just one of a dozen we laid off.
The plant seemed to be running at full tilt now. I could ask what had caused the layoffs and what Orrin's attitude toward that had been, or I could try to get some insight into Orrin's personal life. You seem to be running well now, or am I jumping to conclusions?
Actually, we're running at capacity now. The company ran into a financial snag about 4 months ago. Lost a few contracts. Without the contracts, we didn't need the engineers. But engineers are used to that. We let them go when we have to, and we hire them back when we can.
How did Mr. Quest react when he got the word that he was being laid off?
That was strange. He was furious. We told him it was probably temporary. We thought he understood how the industry works, but he was mad. He accused us of deliberately trying to ruin him. He even threatened me.
What'd he say?
He said someday he'd ruin me. He said, and I'm quoting him, he'd expose my corruption to the light.
Then what happened?
Nothing. I laughed at that wacko and threw him out.
Did you ever see him again? Have any idea where he went?
No. Look, my break's over and I've got to get back to work.
Thanks for the information. One last question. Did business pick up enough for you to hire back the people you laid off?
Every last one, except Quest. We sent him a letter, got it returned unopened. Personally, I'm glad. I don't like him, never did.
The question was, where to next? You could know Bay City a long time without knowing Idaho Street. And you could know a lot of Idaho Street without knowing number 449. The no vacancy sign had been there a long time. Beyond the screen door, I could see someone at the kitchen table. He was counting money. Hey, I need to see the manager.
Not in, Bub.
Who are you?
Wants it to you.
I want a room.
No vacancies, Bub. Can't you read the large print?
I happen to have different information.
Huh? Go fry your head in it.
Well, if he wasn't the manager, who was he? And what did all the money mean? This corroded place didn't look like the First National Bank of Idaho Street. I could go downstairs, bide my time, and wait and see what the man and the money were up to, or I could open the door and ask my questions now, while there was still only me to ask them and only him to answer. Rent day?
You came in anyway.
Don't sit on the floor just to be chummy. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, pulling guns and knives on people that are just looking for a place to live.
Take the dough and beat it. We don't ever think we wouldn't catch up with you.
You take the dough and beat it. I'll put your gun in the mailbox when I leave.
Never mind about the heater. The town's full of old iron. If you could leave the shiv with Clausen, I've done quite a bit of work on it to get it into shape.
And with it?
Could be. Maybe we meet again someday soon, when I got a friend with me.
The room was full mostly of bad air and gin, but there was a reminiscence of marijuana smoke. The guy on the couch was breathing like an old Ford with a leaky head gasket. Sloppy drunks like this guy will tell you anything you want to know, if you don't push too hard. So I could just wake him up by tapping on the bottle and asking him a few questions. If that gets his attention. Some people don't cooperate with you unless you reach out and grab them and make them pay attention.
What? What do you want to know? Who the hell are you?
He sat up after the third try and made an off-balance swipe for the gin. I moved it out of his reach.
Who are you?
Let's just say I'm a friend of the family of a kid who came by here looking for her brother. You weren't very helpful to her. Maybe you remember more now.
I'll tell you the same thing I told her. I don't know where he went, and I don't want to know. He's gone, so he doesn't want his kid sister following him around. It's a free country. It's none of my business.
But it's my business, and that makes it your business.
A real tough guy, huh? Friend of the family? I don't think so. You tell your boss we're wise to him. You tell him you better watch his step. Now, let me talk to the doc. Vince, the doc, is Lester B. Clausen, that's who it is. You just tell him to...
That was about all he could manage for the time being. The house was silent as I started up the stairs with Lester B. Clausen's passkey. I let myself in to room 214. It wasn't empty. I beg your pardon. The manager told me this room was vacant.
You can always try knocking.
Why would I? If the manager said the place was empty, he must have thought you already moved out. Okay if I look around?
There's a no vacancy sign on the house. So what makes you think if you come here, you'll find one?
A man named Orrin P. Quest told me about it. There was a look on its face that you might call watchful, but it was a watchful face to begin with.
You ain't getting nowhere with that breezy manner, Bub. What kind of dick are you, city?
Your grammar is almost as loose as your toupee.
Lay off my toupee. What's a beef?
No beef. I just wondered why you had the room.
I moved from room 215. This here's a better room, that's all. You satisfied?
So, you're Hicks.
How did you...
George W. Hicks. It's in the register, room 215. You said you moved from room 215. If I had a blackboard, I'd write it out for you.
Don't get tough with me.
What happens with people that get tough with you? You make them hold your toupee?
You lay off my toupee if you know what's good for you. What's your connection?
I gave him my card and told him I was looking for Orrin P. Quest. He asked why, but I didn't answer.
Okay, you don't have to answer. I'm a careful guy myself. That's why I'm moving out.
So, Hicks was leaving. He was the only witness I had to the whereabouts of Orrin P. Quest. At least he'd seen him, or maybe talked to him. I could pump him for more information now, or I could try to find out more about Hicks and where he was going. Maybe you don't like reefer smoke.
That and other things. That's why Quest left. He was a respectable guy, like me. I think a couple of hard boys threw a scare into him.
Why?
You just mentioned reefer smoke. Maybe he went to headquarters.
In Bay City? Why would he bother?
So, what kind of work do you do, mostly?
Anything that's reasonably honest.
Reasonably is a word you could stretch. So's honest.
You're so right. Let's get together some quiet afternoon and stretch them. I'd heard Hicks leave the room and walk around downstairs. I heard a car drive away, and I searched room 214 and 215, but found nothing that connected either of them to Orrin P. Quest. Above the silence, I heard a car driving off in the distance. Then something for the first time penetrated my mind. A drunk like Clausen ought to be snoring his head off. He wasn't making a sound. I could leave whenever I wanted to, just by turning the knob. I could take it, or I could leave it for the cops. I took it. Clausen's friends, I pocketed it. I could take it, or I could leave it. I decided to bring it back to the office. I could take this number, and I pocketed it. I could take it, or I could leave it there for the police to find. I pocketed it. I did a nice, quiet 35 getting away from the neighborhood. On the edge of the city, I called the Bay City police. I gave them the address of the late Mr. Lester V. Clausen. They asked why that was important. I told them the coroner would want to know, and hung up. Orphan May Quest was waiting for me when I got back to my office.
Did you find Orrin yet, Mr. Marlowe?
Not yet. I found out that the dump on Idaho Street is peddling reefers. That's marijuana cigarettes.
Why, how disgusting.
Orrin must have got wise and threatened to report it to the police, so they threw a scare into him.
Orrin just gets mean when people try to run him.
Okay, so they didn't try to scare him. Say they just cut off one of his legs and beat him over the head with it.
Are you trying to frighten me, Mr. Marlowe? I paid you $20 for a day's work. All you've done is find out that Orrin lived in a bad neighborhood. It doesn't seem to me you've done a day's work.
But the day isn't over yet. And don't bother about the $20. You can have it back if you like. I didn't even bruise it.
I didn't mean it like that. I know you're doing the best you can, Mr. Marlowe.
With the facts I have.
But I've told you all I know.
I don't think so. How often did Orrin write before he stopped?
Every week.
About what?
He wrote about his work and the plant, and sometimes about a show that he'd been to. Sometimes it was about church.
What did he do for fun?
He has this expensive camera.
And he stopped writing how long ago?
Well, about 3 or 4 months. But it was like I told you.
And she really told me everything she knew. If I believed that, I could back off a little. On the other hand, maybe it was time I pointed out to her the parts of her story that didn't add up.
You always sound like you don't believe me.
That's because I don't. You don't trust me.
But I do trust you, really.
Sure, kid. That's why you withheld your address and phone number from me.
Please don't think that. It's not you. It's
Just not me you're afraid of? Why are you so determined to find your brother if you're that afraid of him?
Orrin can be mean sometimes, but he's my brother, Mr. Marlowe. Orrin wouldn't like it at all to find out that I was snooping into his affairs, and he's not afraid of anyone. People don't cross Orrin because he'll fix them, and he never gives up. Right is right.
So what you're afraid of is that Orrin might have stood up to the wrong people. You're afraid he'll try to get revenge, and that will get him into real trouble.
It's been a long time since he wrote. Something must have gone wrong.
And even if you found him, that doesn't mean you could stop him.
He's still my brother. He needs to know that he's not alone and he could always come home to Mother and me.
Orrin P. Quest sounded like a small-minded busybody. In Manhattan, Kansas, that could make you unpopular. In Bay City, that could make you dead. Clausen was a sloppy drunk and he ran a drug house. He was too stupid to be the boss, so he must have been working for someone else. But why was he dead? Who stood to gain anything from his death? He didn't look like he had anything that was worth killing him for. Maybe he was killed because he knew something. But what did he know? Something about Orrin Quest? Something about George Hicks? Or some other reason?